Hey everybody, it's Strict9 with Strict9 GP, and welcome back to my channel. And today I've decided to go ahead and start on my Out of the Park 20 Phillies playthrough, just continuing with the playthrough that I've been running now since version 18 and 19 of Out of the Park Baseball. If you're new to the channel, I'll give you a kind of a brief history before we get started. And then if you have any suggestions, I'm still looking in terms of what kind of video I want to do this season. Last year I did a GM only challenge with the Cincinnati Reds, who I thought would be a pretty tough team to rebuild. Turns out I was able to get them to the World Series in like 5 years. I think I got them to the playoffs the first year, into the wild card. But I'm looking for another challenge. I don't even know. I mean, it might be this year I do something completely different. But a couple things that I'm looking at, honestly, I would like to play around with that live now, I think they call it, where you take over a team at a certain point within the season and, with their rosters and the injured list and record and all that, and see what you can do the rest of the year with them. That intrigues me a little bit, and I've kind of been thinking about a historical replay. It's been a long time since I've done a historical replay in Out of the Park Baseball. It's a lot of fun if you do it right. You have to, and in doing it right means putting a lot of work into the front end and setting up the league. But I still think that might be something to look at. And I've got a few options I want to do. Phillies would be one of those. I mean, I'm a Phillies fan, and I when it comes to the history, I probably know the Phillies history more than most other teams, so I've got a few things I think I could do with them that would be kind of fun. But there might be some other options out there too for a historical replay. But if you got any suggestions, let me know in the comments. I'll probably try to narrow something down here in the next few weeks. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and continue with this Phillies playthrough. We're in the 2038 season. It's just started spring training. This has been a challenging one, and when I started this, they had just introduced the challenge mode to Out of the Park Baseball. I went ahead and used the settings for challenge mode, but I didn't log in and keep up with my stats or my rankings, however that was supposed to be. I just kind of looked at it as the challenge mode just got rid of in one go. It just kind of got rid of a lot of different settings or changed a lot of different settings. So it gave you a challenge. I mean, it was, I like to call it a fog of war effect. You can't edit the players. There's certain ratings you can't look at and those kind of things. So if I were to look at the league settings, for instance, this is just how I rate the players. I use a 1 to 20 scale for individual ratings, like stuff for pitchers and movement, contact for hitters, those kind of things, and then stars for overall potential. Those things I could change, but there was in the league settings, under the rules, for instance. Yeah, I guess I was able to change a little bit of things there, but for stats and AI, these were kind of set by the challenge mode, so I couldn't really, all the stamina and settings for pitchers and all those kind of things, like for number of home runs and how that's going to impact your playthrough. I couldn't really change any of those, and I believe there was some other things I couldn't change, or under the players, the creation modifiers, those were all the same default 1 across the board, and I can't change them. And then I think the biggest thing is when it comes, I am using a scouting system, but I can't really see a whole lot when it comes to the scouting system. I mean, I can see what my head scout says and what OSA says, but there's in a normal game, if you don't have the challenge mode, you have a setting here that lets you see how the players stack up against their current league. So this guy is at Clearwater, which is Florida State League High A. I could have my scout just tell me how he looks against High A competition, or even how he looks against Double A in the Southern League competition, and that gives me an idea of whether I should move these guys up or not. And so I can't do that in this playthrough with a challenge mode, but it has been a challenge. So not the challenge that I thought it was going to be. I thought surely I would have a better go of it, but using those settings, it has been a challenge. I think the next one, though, the next playthrough I didn't use it for the GM challenge with the Reds, for instance. I probably won't use those settings again for a while because I do like having a lot of control. I don't like gaming the system. I'm not going to go in there and re-edit some of my players to make them less injury prone or anything like that. But there are certain settings that I do like to have control over, so I'll probably next time not use the challenge mode and see how that goes. But going back to my history with this playthrough, it's been really tough. I started in version 18 with the 2017 Phillies, which is a different team than what they are now with some of the additions they made in the last couple of years. But it took me a couple of years to get a winning record and make the playoffs, which I thought, at that point, hey, I'm on a good roll here. I should be able to have this team back in the playoffs pretty regularly. But next 3 years, subpar, sub 500 records, finally made the playoffs again in 2023. Then from there, I barely made it in 2028. This was probably my best run, in all honesty. From 2028, when I was 83 and 79, won the division in a weak year for the National League East. Finished 500 the next year. Made the wild card in 2030. Didn't make the wild card the next year, although we had a pretty decent year, 85 and 77, and then won the division with my best record so far, 94 and 68. And then after that, we fell off big time. Next year we had one of our worst years at 69 and 93. Barely finished above 500 the next season, and then you can see a couple of 70 so win seasons before we finally had another winning season last year. Last year was a tough year too because we missed the playoffs by one game. We missed the wild card by one game, and we missed it to the New York Mets in the division, which kind of sucked. But I'm hoping that that's at least a decent sign that we're turning things around. But there's going to be some struggles, and the biggest struggle overall with this playthrough has been with the pitching. It's really tough to get quality pitching. The AI does a great job of hanging on to it once it comes through, once it comes around, and you're really constantly scrambling to build a good pitching staff. To show you what I'm talking about here, looking at the pitching ratings going into this season, I have 6 starters. I usually like to go with a 6-man rotation in the spring. I have 6 starters. Only one of those starters is a 3-star, which means, right around average, maybe a little bit above average starter in the league. And he comes at a pretty premium price, really almost $14 million a year. Last year, I acquired him in trade from the Dodgers, and he really didn't show me too much in the short time he was with us. 13 starts, just 3 wins, 5+ ERA. He's I really gambled on this guy with that salary, but that's what you have to do, or that's what you have to do right now anyway in this playthrough when pitching is just it's so tough to get. So during the off season, every off season really, I go in. I need to improve my pitching, and this year I really need to improve bullpen and starting rotation. I've got a pretty decent closer. Excuse me. He's a 5-star closer. He got some votes last year for reliever of the year, but a good setup guy in Espinal, who's a guy I drafted as a starter, but he's turned into a pretty good reliever. And then it kind of falls off after that. I picked up this guy Steve White. Probably going to use him as middle relief or setup. He's a 3.5-star guy. Pitched 77 games last year. I thought that was pretty good. And then the rest of that rotation is pretty slim. I mean, these are guys that I used last year, and it was really just the dilemma that I have every season is in free agency, it's a lot of 3-star pitchers that are out there, and they're wanting, 14, 15, 16 million dollars a year, and they're just not worth that much. But relative to the rest of the league, certainly relative to what's out there in free agents, they are the best pitchers available, but I just can't seem to swing it. So this year I'm going to even though we had a good year last year, this could be a step back, but I feel like I've got to do that to look long term for this team. And so I'm going to try 2 rookie guys here that I drafted high to see if they can develop this spring into a reliable starter. Contreras is a former number 1 pick. He's got a 3-star potential, but his individual pitches look really good. He's got 4 pitches, 3 of them pretty strong. Stuff, movement, control, he's double digits in all those. And then I'm going with Ken Dion, even though sometimes this happens. His ratings took a dive in the offseason. He was, I think, a 1.5 with a 3.5 potential at one point last year. He's dropped all the way down to 2 potential for my scout. OSA, though, he's still 3. He's got probably more potential in some cases than Contreras, but the thing that bothers me is his movement that usually leads to a lot of home runs. But I'm going to give him a chance in that rotation too, and I'm hoping that one of those guys will win that 5th spot and then just continue to develop as the year goes on. But that's my biggest wish. Offensively, though, it's a different story. We're not that bad of a team, and for you long time watchers, we did unbelievably sign Lou Villa over the offseason. I say unbelievably because this guy's a 4-star player. When he's healthy, he won a Silver Slugger, or I think I've got it listed as Platinum Stick, but it's comparable to Silver Slugger last year in left field, or playing right field, which is where I played him most. Guy has great ratings all across the board, even good speed. He's got a personality rating, just really one of the best you're going to get. He had a 4.9, almost 5 wins above replacement season last year, only starting 111 games. Great numbers across the board when he's healthy. The problem is he's almost never healthy, and I went in and signed him last year or traded for him early last season and rationalized it by really I rationalized it by what turned out to happen. I mean, this guy is worth 12, 14 million, whatever you have to pay for him, even with the games that he gives you. If you've got at least a few other guys you can plug in there when he's injured, I mean, he's going to be injured. He's probably going to miss, 50 plus games average a season. But if he gives you 2/3 of a season, he's more valuable than most players you're going to get for the full season. So I was happy to have him last year, and for some reason in the off season, he was willing to re-sign at a very low number, 1.2 million, which is barely above minimum in this league. So I went for it. Same rationale. Even if this guy gets injured, he's more valuable than most players you're going to play for a full season. So this spring, I'm going to be playing him. I wouldn't say I'm kind of babying him, but I'm I'm really wanting to give him some rest. So it's every 3rd game he's going to be sitting, and I'm hoping that's enough to keep him healthy through the spring. Sorry, had to get a drink of water there. And then the rest of the team is pretty set from where it was last year. Portillo is a guy that I traded for, or at least if he came off waivers. I think I traded for him. Yeah, I traded one of my better pitching prospects for him, but um, that was at the point when Luvia was injured, and I figured I could use another outfielder, and this guy may turn out to be a really good player in this league. He's just 25. He won Rookie of the Month last year towards the end of the season, like for August, I think, or September. So he started turning it on last year, and he's a good player offensively and defensively. He's a good, solid left fielder. So I'm really happy that I picked him up. And then Josh Gordon coming off a monster year, runner up to MVP. I really think he probably should have gotten it. He just didn't have as much wins above replacement, but he's a guy I gambled on pretty big a couple off seasons ago. And, with the idea that I'm never going to get pitching help, I decided to stack this offense as much as I could. So I've got guys like Josh Gordon, J.J. Lohman, who's coming to the end of his peak years, but he had a good year last year, 5.6 wins above replacement, was an all-star. I don't know if he got, he was also Silver Slugger, Platinum Stick award at third base. So offensively, Mike Swan's another guy too. Before I move on, he's a guy, great defensive shortstop, good speed, led the league in stolen bases now 2 years in a row. I like this guy's makeup. I don't know if he's a leadoff hitter though, and I tried that all last year, so I'm moving him down a little bit this year. And as much as it pains me to do, I'm putting Vargas back at center, and I'm just going to take the hit defensively in center, and he's going to be back to leading off. I'm going to see how that works in the spring. Vargas is a first-round pick from 2024, probably the best player, honestly, that I've drafted and developed here in terms of the career that they've had, although I've had a few other guys who've turned into really big players offensively, not so much pitching-wise, though. But he's been with this team for a long time. He's been the starter. He's a fan favorite. I signed him to a long-term contract, but it wasn't a high-dollar contract. It's like $12 million, 12 and a half, I think. And I figured he was worth that. He's got another team option coming up at the end of this season. I would like, this is one of the things that I really like to do in out-of-the-park baseball. If I'm doing a team like the Phillies that's got a long history, I like the idea of developing players who make those all-time greats list, which you can look at under the team history under the team history, and then the batting leaders, pitching leaders up here at the top. I like being able to develop guys who make it into the top 10 or even above. Like Juan Ochoa was a guy that I had signed. I think I picked him up in an off-season when every other team had given up on him, and he was just a free agent and barely played 10 games in the majors. But I took a gamble on him, and he became the third time, or the number 3 all-time leader in home runs for the Phillies. So those are the kind of things I like to do. And you'll see that Vargas is on several categories, walks, but like stolen bases, some pretty decent categories for his career. And like hits, he's currently 10th. He has 100 hits this year. He's going to move up to 8th all time. I think that's pretty cool, especially when you look at a team like the Phillies, who have such a long history. Some of it not so good, but they've been around a long time. And for to be able to develop a player in 2017 or 2024, whenever it was I drafted him, that makes the top all-time list, I think that's pretty fun. So that's a lot of that explains my reasoning why I keep that guy on the team. But hopefully he'll be adequate. He's usually adequate offensively. His power's gone down considerably, but he gives you a decent on-base percentage. Still speedy enough to get quite a few steals. Scores a lot of runs, 91. He'll probably top, if he has a normal season, stays healthy, he should top 1,000 runs for his career this year. And he's also on a top 10 leaderboard for that category for the Phillies. And then another guy I want to talk about too is Ian Norman. Was a former number 1 pick. He was second pick overall. That was when I had that terrible year. He is by far my best prospect. Both my scout and OSA has him at a 5-star potential. But defensively, he's a little shaky. I'm hoping he picks that up as he goes along. And power, not that great, but I think he's going to turn into a good offensive catcher before it's all said and done. He had some pretty decent stops a few places in the minors. He looked good at AA. He was looking good at AAA when I called him up. So I'm hoping he's the real deal, and he starts showing that this year. So seems like there was one other thing I was going to look at before. Oh, yeah. A lot of things that when it comes to spring coverage, what I like to do and see how I stack up against other teams. I like this off-season center, and I go off-season summary by team. And this gives you a good indication of how you're doing. I don't think you can sort it by anything else, but it's by wins above replacement, how much you gained or lost in the offseason. So if you look at this, a lot of big playoff teams from last year, the Dodgers and Diamondbacks, for instance, are at the very bottom. Miami had a tough offseason so far, too. And for Philadelphia, we were negative, but we're still above Washington, still above Atlanta, still above Miami. The only team that probably did better was the Mets. The Mets went on a spending spree. They made the wild card last year. It looks like they're wanting to go all the way this year. And Cincinnati, I kept seeing them come up. They picked up a lot of guys in the offseason. They picked up one of the better starting pitchers out there. They picked up Alfredo Santana, who's probably one of the best all-time players in this playthrough, and Pete Parker was the best starting pitcher available out there. So Cincinnati should be a pretty tough team this year if injuries don't happen. But looking at the Mets, they picked up a first baseman who's pretty decent reliever. Some relievers looks like there, and a couple pitchers who coming to the tail end of their careers. I don't know how great they'll be, but they're probably going to be the bigger competition this year. For us, the ones we lost Villa, picked him up, but probably the big one was Rob LaRue, guy that was a surprise anchor of the pitching staff, honestly, for a couple seasons that I had him. But I paid him like almost $15 million, and he's available right now. I don't know if he's worth another investment, honestly. But let me take a look and see what he would take. But he's coming off 17 wins, pretty high ERA, a lot of home runs, but a lot of strikeouts. I wonder if he would take. Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought he was a free agent. He's signed with Pittsburgh. But he was probably my biggest loss in the offseason. It's hard to overcome that in a lot of ways. But that's the team as we go into spring training, and I'm going to try to get through spring training here. I know I've rambled a little bit, but the last thing I wanted to do was look at the Hall of Fame class for this year, because it was big. We had some big guys go in, and first year guys, a few honestly, came through this year that were big. But just to let you know how some of these guys finished their careers, Mike Trout was a first-year Hall of Fame inductee this year, and in this playthrough, he finished 106.9 wins above replacement. I feel like I compare this guy numbers-wise. I don't know if they're the same player, but their numbers look similar career-wise to Mickey Mantle, honestly. Although Mickey Mantle was a switch hitter, but he finished just shy of 3,000 hits, 1,900 runs, 584 home runs, 1,666 RBIs, 251 stolen bases. Struck out a lot throughout his career, but all things considered, one of the best players, definitely of his generation. 3-time MVP. He didn't win any MVP awards in this playthrough, though, but a great player throughout his career. Another first-time guy was just surprised was Edwin Diaz, who was um, a really dominant closer in the game, five-time reliever of the year, 499 saves, finished so just shy of 500. I'm kind of surprised he went first ballot when you consider some of the other guys that were on there, but he went. This guy went in his second year, Arturo Loza. Um, I was surprised on this one because he didn't have some of the Hall of Fame numbers that you typically see. He didn't get to 2,000 hits or 500 home runs, those kind of things. But he won Rookie of the Year, MVP, was All-Star almost every year that he was here. But his wins above replacement was really high, considering the amount of time that he played. 71 wins above replacement. His rookie season, he had one of the best wins above replacement I've seen in this playthrough, 10.8. Uh, so he was very productive, and he started late. He didn't join the Dodgers or get to the majors until he was 26. You give him a couple more years, that would have given him over 2,000 um, hits, for instance, probably 400 plus home runs, and maybe 80 WAR, wins above replacement. I was surprised that he went in as early as he did, but a good season for him. And then a couple of guys here, Bryce Harper. This is how he did in this playthrough. Not that great, to be honest. At 80 wins above replacement, his average was low. He struck out a lot. He also got a lot of walks. But I think the playthrough I'm doing with the Cincinnati Reds, he's been much better. But I think he's still probably going to make the Hall of Fame. 500 plus home runs, 1,600 plus runs, but just 2,200 hits. I don't know. It's kind of if some other better players come along or some other good players come along, he's going to have a tough time of it. And then Rafael Devers had a good career. He finished his career in this playthrough with us, with the Phillies, and really just had 4 very productive years there late in his career. Finished 60 plus wins above replacement, 2,400 hits, 1,400 plus RBIs. I think personally that he's a Hall of Fame type player. It's going to depend, though, what other kind of players are coming in. Again, like with Harper, like, if Arenado gets more votes, he was 100 home run shy of 500, but he had better production numbers in some ways than Devers, so it could be a toss up. And he was another guy. The Phillies in this playthrough, you can't fault us for trying. I mean, he was with the Phillies for a couple years and we were kind of a good place to go to rejuvenate a career for a while there. He had, after really struggling with the Dodgers for a couple seasons, for 3 seasons, we signed him, and he had 2 very great seasons with us that turned his career around, made him a hot free agent commodity again, and he finished out his career pretty strong. But I thought it was interesting to look at that, the Hall of Fame this year, because there were some really good players came through. I feel like next year it might be these 3: Devers, Harper, Arenado. This guy keeps getting votes simply because he was a international free agent who dominated his first 3 seasons in the league. Or I think that was 18, 23. So he was good from 18 through 23. He was just a dominant player, 3-time MVP, Rookie of the Year. But he just did not play long enough, in my book, to put up the kind of numbers that would merit the Hall of Fame. And so, the AI, I like having the AI voting because, it's always good to see the surprise people who make it. But I don't know why the AI likes this guy so much, but he's got a great chance of making it above Harper and Devers, actually. But enough setup on the league stuff. Let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is sim ahead through next week. Get started with the spring training. And spring training is usually just like it always is. It's not going to give you a great indication of what you're going to do, but we're already getting a trade proposal here. Another decent pitcher, but I have a feeling Louis Aguirre, who my scout likes a lot, I think this guy's going to be needed at some point if he does get injured. And, I've got plenty of control with this guy. I'm not going to give him away right now. So I'm just going to reject that trade. And Oakland lost a pretty big pitcher. One other thing I wanted to do, too, before I get too deep, is I wanted to see what kind of starters are available right now, just to make sure there's nobody I'm going to miss. I mean, Saucedo, he's fragile, and he's only a 2-pitch pitcher, so that's no big worries there. But Chris Carroll is still out there. He's wrecked, though. Mike Steele. Oh, man, this guy could be really... He wants to be the closer, though, and I don't need a closer, and I don't want to have that distraction on the team of two guys wanting to be closers. Bobby Buchanan, fragile. He wants to be a closer. Butch Ritchie, don't like that movement. This guy, Steve DeBroke. I'm just going to stick with what I got right now. I know it's not the greatest, but we're going to go with it. So we got, who is that? Roca. Just a moderate injury. I'm going to let him play through that. He's not going to be used a whole lot in that bullpen anyway. So taking a look at first week's play in spring coverage, we're 2-2. I like to get through maybe a couple weeks, and then I'll start looking at the individual performances, see who's playing well, who's got a good chance to keep their job or win the job. So Colorado would trade for Portillo. This is going to have to be a great pitcher for Portillo, and it's not, in my book anyway. I mean, that's the thing. When you're offered a 3-star player, you could find a 3-star player in the league. A 3-star pitcher, even though pitching is at a premium, you're still going to be able to get 3-star pitching, either through free agency or doing a trade. This guy looks good, but I wonder what they would trade. Let me see what they would take, or if they would take anything. No, they don't see anything that would be a good fit. We're actually winning a little bit here in spring training for what it means. I think we're 5-4 now. We got another trade proposal from Boston, throwing a lot of pictures at me. Now, J.D. Cochran is definitely on the bubble. We don't, in that Cincinnati Reds playthrough that I had, it turned out that the DH in one of the league evolutions, the National League took on the DH. But in this playthrough, that never happened. And I really don't have a place for him right now. So as I'm kind of keeping him in my back pocket, to be honest, because this guy's he had a great rookie season, but defensively he's a little bit of a risk. And but his numbers against righties, again on this 1 to 20 scale, he's almost topped out in several things there, in contact and gap and avoiding Ks. So he's definitely an offensive, good offensive player. But Gordon, he's the starter for sure, and he picked up his contract option, so he's going to be with me for 2 more seasons. Cochran, though, he's not costing me anything, and I feel like I need to keep him, like I say, in my back pocket in case injuries do come around middle of the season. This is a guy I'm hoping I can trade, 1-to-1, which is what I like to do. I like to do one-on-one trades. It's kind of like occasionally I'll do a multiplayer trade, but it's rare. I have to be in a really true rebuild mode before I do that. But I feel like if I can get a 3-to-3, like 3-star player back from him, it'll be worth it. But I'm going to wait and see what kind of injuries I have over the season. And gosh, hopefully it's not to Gordon. But if I do, then I'll be trading Cochran, hopefully, to pick up somebody. So saying all that, going back to this trade offer from Boston, This is an $11 million 3-star pitcher with pretty weak control. Um, so, like I say, I mean, a lot of strong pitches, though. 5 very good pitches. Contract weighed a little heavier. I just feel like I can get a 3-star player elsewhere without having to spend that kind of money. And he's coming off really a subpar year last year. Um, After 3 decent years, which probably gave him that contract. But I don't think it's worth it at this point to go for that trade. So we're keeping going, 5-5, hanging out around 500 so far. Another trade proposal, and Portillo and Cochran. I'm glad that Cochran's getting some notice, but I did feel like Portillo was going to get some notice. He's getting even better. Look at that, 3.5 with a 4.5 potential now, and even OSA likes him pretty well too. Uh, it's going to have to be a great player for me to get rid of this guy, and this guy's not it. I mean, he's a starting pitcher, would help us out honestly, but he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. So Portillo, I've got him for several more years. I'm not willing to make that trade right now. So looking at spring coverage, 11 games. Let me go ahead and take a look at how we're doing. So first off, pitching, and I've got a lot of pitchers I'm throwing out there. I think it's what is that? If I'm looking overall, we're testing 37, which I know you can go up to 60. I said in a previous episode on spring training, I don't like to get too many players out there because then it's just it's really hard to manage. But I want to see how they're doing and they changed this with this new version. If you want to find out how they're doing in spring training, you have to go to split, and game type is the setting, and then you look at spring training. So as I suspected, that starting rotation sucks. At least Mayhew is looking like he is my number one starter, so he's at least pitching like he can take on the challenge of that. But man, that rest. Well, hey, I'll take that back. Contreras has yet to give up a run, so that's good. Man, there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made in the bullpen. Mendoza's looking good though. He's that 5-star closer I was talking about. He's yet to give up a run in 7 2/3. So hopefully, between all this mess of names, I usually go with a 12-man pitching staff in the regular season. So hopefully, I can find 12 players here that would help me out. Then in the lineups, let's see what batting stats are looking like. Ian Norman having a great spring, so hopefully it's starting to fall into place for him. And even the backups looking pretty good. Gordon having a great spring. Koopman, who's a pretty solid 2.5-star investment. Really good defensive player, got speed, almost led the league in hitting 2 years in a row. Lohman struggling a little bit, Swan struggling a little bit, Villa struggling, Vargas, he's looking pretty good. So this, there's only, unlike the pitching situation, I don't have a whole lot of room here. I go with 13 position players in the regular season, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's only a couple guys here that I can move out of that situation. It'll probably be Cordray, who's got some decent offensive ratings, but defensively he's not as good. And I'm probably going to go with 5 outfielders. So Aguirre, I'd like to leave in there. Tuck, he's never played above Double-A. I think this guy's got a good future as a bench bat, but probably won't have to go with him yet. But he's going to be a guy I can put in Triple-A, and he's going to be a good, I think, injury replacement as I need him. But so far, I mean, the offense is shaping up a little bit like I thought it would. Let's go ahead and keep simming through. And personal message. I don't need a catcher right now, so I'll overlook that trade. So we're 8-5, 9-5. Um, we're actually winning for the most part here. So back to news. Another thing that's really hard to. Occasionally, your scout, even as well as he's rated, and my scout is, um, he is, legendary at scouting the majors, outstanding internationally, all these kind of things. He's got great ratings. It's still tough on the international scouting to find somebody. I guess maybe I just don't have the budget put into it. I'm going, let's see, 12 million, like 2.5 international free agents. Uh, I don't know. I would rather put that towards the draft, honestly. Uh, so I'm fine with that. But he occasionally will get a guy who might be, you know, 3-star potential way down the line, but it's tough. It's really tough. Um, I'm not gonna go for that one. So we're at 9-6. Bobby Holmes, a former. Is he? No, he's not a former. I think it's someone else. So some injuries here. We are 9-7 now. So we took a little bit of a step back. Still playing pretty good. Ten and 7, 10 and 8, 10 and 9. Um, got an injury here from Doug Barbarossa, but it was just a day-to-day injury, nothing too bad. He should be better, ready to go. He was a guy I picked up in the offseason. He can be an emergency starter if I need him, but I traded Eddie Tipton for him, a guy that I really didn't need anymore. Although he put up some good numbers for me when he did start in right field. The Yankees want to trade for Louis Aguirre. Man. Okay, let me look at this one. 29 years old, 4-star potential, 3.5 overall. Mid-rotation starter, which they're all mid-rotation starters for the most part, unless you get a 4 and 5-star guy. Personally, I don't think this guy's ever shown that kind of potential. Last year they gave him a 3.5 wins above replacement, but pretty shoddy numbers. He's cheap for what it's worth, and 3 years he's just now. No, he's not cheap. Okay, so no to that trade. I thought they were still in his arbitration years there. So don't want to touch that one. So we're 12-9, 13-9. Are we going to finish on top in the East? And Juan Reynaga, who won the MVP, a controversial, in my view, MVP last year over Josh Gordon, he's injured for 4 to 5 weeks. This guy, he's had at least 1 year where he was injury prone, but he's a 5-star player, just 26 years old. He is one of the best players I've seen develop in the game since I've been playing it, at least the last few seasons, or the last few versions of the game. At his age, it's amazing what he's accomplished so far. 273 home runs, 44 wins above replacement. As long as he doesn't start getting injured, he's going to put up some amazing numbers, but and they've invested in it too. So he's signed through 2042 if he doesn't opt out. And he may, because at that age, he's going to get a long-term contract from someone. And another scouting, and like I say, this guy's a half-star potential. So we're into the last week of spring training. We're 13-9, just a game back of the Mets. Looking at other teams, Kansas City Royals having a good spring. Angels 18-4, best record in the spring. So Arizona and Colorado having good springs, even though Arizona had a terrible offseason. Maybe they've got a good, a deep minor league system. That would be a good thing. So don't need a catcher. So let's see here. 15-10, we're tied with the Mets. And we got 2 more games left in spring training. Uh-oh. Don't want to lose it on too much of a losing streak. But we do lose to Miami last game. So we finished the spring 15-13. Game behind the Mets. Cincinnati, I guess if this is any indication, their offseason's paid off. They had a good spring, 18-10. Colorado edged out the Diamondbacks. Angels a great offseason, apparently, or at least a great spring. But I'm going to take a look at how some of these guys finished, and then we're going to offline. I'll have some big decisions to make about who's going to make this team. But I tell you, right now, Mayhew looked good. Lugo, Hines was not too bad. Those guys I'm definitely going to have to depend on. When you get to this 4th, 5th, 6th spot here, I'm not really sold on Hannibal, but Contreras had a great spring. I think I'm going to leave him in at least that 5th spot and see what he does. And then the bullpen, some ups and downs, but I'm going to I'll need 7 guys out of that mix. I'll probably be able to find 7 guys. Mannion, for instance, 3.5 star potential. Fairly young guy. I'm going to probably go with him. That kind of pitcher. Mendoza, a great spring. Transu will be there, even though he had a bad spring. He had a great year for me last year. And then on the lineup side, Norman, he struggled down the stretch of spring training. Finished 234. Gordon, great spring. 8 homers, 23 RBIs. Koopman, Swan, struggled. Portillo was okay. Villa, not so good. And Vargas, not so good. But again, pretty set on the offense for the moment, barring any injuries. But what I'll do offline is I'll go ahead and finish up my roster spots and sim ahead to opening day. And then we'll come back, look at the team, and get started. Usually it takes me 3 episodes the way I sim out these, or the way I record the videos to get through a season. So I'll have maybe the first month or so of the season, and then come back around All-Star game, or at least post-draft to the All-Star game. And then last episode's usually the September stretch. Depends on how we are, whether we're in the playoffs or not. But I usually like to, regardless, finish out the season. But hopefully, if you're a new subscriber, hopefully you like the channel. And I appreciate some of the comments I've heard on the other videos. I'm probably going to do one more at least tutorial video in the near future, maybe looking at how to back up your leagues or store your leagues. But I'd like to get back into the playthroughs now, because that's where I get most of my enjoyment. But as always, thanks for watching, subscribing, liking the videos, comments, and I'll see you next episode when we start off the season. Thanks.